Good evening, everyone. Incredible that 112 of you have come in the heat. I'm sure there are lots of cooler things you can think of doing for the next 45 minutes and to an hour. So I really hope that you find this session useful. My name is Becky Dawson and I'm the National Wellbeing Lead at Twinkl. My background is in secondary education. So I was a drama teacher, safeguarding lead, and at the end of my career, a Senko. So I am 100% team TA because I could not have done my job without brilliant TAs throughout that time. You saved my bacon on many occasions just for being so dedicated, passionate and hardworking. So thank you to TAs to start this session off. We're going to talk about mental health. Hence the title this evening. So we're going to have a little think about what that might mean for us. We're going to think about why it's important to talk about mental health and actually why we shouldn't be afraid of it. Sometimes, you know, that word still has a bit of a stigma, and we will talk about that as we go through. Thinking about when to start a conversation about well-being and mental health, and I will use well-being and mental health interchangeably as we talk through. They are kind of very common factors. And thinking about how we might structure a safe conversation around mental health and thinking about signposting. And as Casey said, we will have a Q&A at the end. So I will endeavour to answer any questions. Obviously, if they're very specific to a young person, I can only give very general responses to those and try and help as best I can and maybe signpost to appropriate places. So we're going to start with a Slido. So if you can, please scan that QR code with your phone, or you can go to slido.com and put the number in 1613409. What that means is, oh, gone too far. Let me try that again. There we go. You should be able to join that Slido and tell me, what does the term mental health mean to you? So I'm interested to hear from you what you think of when you hear the word mental health. So we've got emotional well-being. The person who's put the code in there, you are in the right place. Now you just need to put your ideas in there. Emotions, mind well-being. That's an interesting one. Focus on the mind. Coping with life's ups and downs, how your mind is, how you feel about yourself. That's a really good one. Our self-esteem is inextricably linked to well-being. If a word goes really big on a slide, or if you haven't done one before, that's because lots of you have said it. So emotional well-being is coming up again and again. Recognizing how you're feeling and understanding why you feel that way. Brilliant. Resilience and self-confidence. Trouble navigating your emotions and brain. Yep. Psychologically stable and well, something to care for, life's challenges. Oh, brilliant. Lots of things coming. The way your emotional and general mind's health. What else have we got? Confident in your feelings. So lots of things about understanding your emotions and feelings. And if you were at our session a few weeks ago around emotional literacy, there is a really clear link between those two things. What else have we got? Anything else? Uncontrollable, state of mind, understanding emotions, self-worth. Brilliant. Yes. So just under that one term, mental health, there's a huge amount of thoughts coming from you about what that might mean. Someone's even put trauma on there as well. And that's certainly, there is a crossover there. What's really important to understand when we talk about what is mental health is that mental health in itself is not a negative thing. So we all have mental health in the same way that we all have physical health. So when we talk about our physical health, we don't assume that that means that we are ill. In the same way that when we talk about mental health, we shouldn't assume that that means that we are ill. I think unfortunately over the years, things I think are getting a little bit better. There is still a bit of a stigma attached to that phrase, mental health. Young Minds gives the definition of mental health as being understood as our emotional, psychological and social well-being, and those three things are really closely interconnected. So as you've already highlighted, it's around those feelings and those emotions, how we see ourselves, how we perceive the world around us, but also our ability to connect. And what we know is that 1 in 5 young people, and it has been 1 in 4 in the last couple of years post-COVID, it's 1 in 5 at the moment, young people might struggle with their mental health at any point during the year. They might face challenges with their mental health, and we're going to explore a little bit about what that might look like. And we're going to think a little bit about what we can do if we think that is the case. I'm just going to stop sharing this now because I just want to show a quick video.
We all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. And just like our physical health, our mental health can go up and down. When we talk about mental health, we mean our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and moods. It can be described in different ways, for example, bad nerves. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood through teens to adulthood. It becomes a mental health problem when someone struggles to cope, and it affects the way they may live and think. People don't have to wait to hit rock bottom to get help, which is why talking about it early on is important. If someone is struggling with poor mental health over many weeks and it is affecting their everyday life, then offer to help them find what's right for them. Around 1 in 4 people experience mental health problems every year. Many of us are likely to experience anxiety and depression at some point. Despite this, people may feel isolated and ashamed that they are struggling to cope, and fear that others may think less of them if they talk about it. Life can be challenging for all of us, and mental health is a part of being human. Sometimes mental health problems might be the result of difficult and traumatic situations that someone has experienced, or it might be due to lots of smaller challenges that have built up over time. It can be hard to see someone struggling with their mental health, but you don't need to be an expert to offer support. Often small, everyday actions can make a big difference. For example, listening without judging. Just as we can improve our physical well-being, we can boost our mental well-being too. You can view our other videos to get some ideas on how to support yourself and your loved ones.
So I play that not only because it's useful for us to reflect on, but actually it's a really good potential video to use with young people as well. I think it's a really good explanation. So let me just get the slides back up again. Bear with me. So when we talk about mental health, we often talk about risk factors, the things that maybe make us more at risk of experiencing mental health challenges. And this is a clear kind of illustration of some of the things that might impact our mental health. Now, it's really important whenever we're talking about risk factors to be aware that you might not experience any of these things and still face challenges with your mental health. There are so many different things that can affect it. But we know that in a class of 30 pupils, so if you're supporting classes, the average size would be 30, we might be looking at 1 young person who's experienced the death of a parent. 4 could be living in lone parent families. Now, big caveat there, I am the mum of a lone parent family. That doesn't mean that my children are definitely going to have mental health challenges, but that might mean that other challenges are of higher risk, might mean less money, might mean more stress. There's lots of different things that kind of cross over with that. We know that 5 in the class can have a mental health difficulty, 5 could be living in absolute poverty, 7 may have self-harmed, and 11 could have experienced bullying. So when we think of those things, and we equate and recognize that young people might struggle with their mental health, a really important thing to understand is sometimes the challenges that young people face and the difficulties like the anxiety or the low mood are really normal reactions to difficult circumstances. If you're living in poverty or you're experiencing bullying on a daily basis, it is normal to feel anxious. And sometimes what happens when we focus too much on mental health is that we assume that there's something wrong with the young person because of how they're reacting. But actually, often it's a really natural way. It's an understandable way to react. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A and we can have a look at those at the end. So what I'm keen to kind of put across is we don't want to pathologize these situations and think that the young people are need a diagnosis, will fix their anxiety. Sometimes we need to think about the things that are going on around them, and that's a real challenge for us in education, isn't it? Because we don't always have control of those things. some interesting data that came out in September, and this was talking about whether young people felt comfortable talking to an adult in their school about their mental health. 11% felt very comfortable. That's brilliant. 46% felt fairly comfortable. But I think, quite a significant chunk. So, 38% did not feel very comfortable or not at all comfortable talking about their mental health with an adult in their school. And that's for lots of different reasons. But it is upon us to think about how can we make a safe space to create those conversations. That is not to say that we need to be therapists in school. And I hear this a lot, that, we're there to educate or we're there to support. We are not there to be therapists. And that is absolutely the case. But when we, think about how much time children, young people spend in schools, creating a space where they might be able to talk about these things if they're struggling is really important. And actually, teaching assistants are often the people that young people will speak to, aren't you? You're often the people that build those key relationships and spend that time with the children and young people. We know that young people with SEND are at much higher risk of experiencing challenges with their mental health. And by the way, that's not necessarily because they have a special educational need. That's because of the systems that they are having to try and work through and be in education with, that then lead them to struggle with their mental health. And so creating a safe space for those conversations is crucial. So why talk about mental health? The more comfortable we are about talking about mental health, the more comfortable children and young people will be. That's why I think it's a really important part of the curriculum. I think we should, in the same way we teach young people nutritious eating and teach them the healthy plate, I think we should be talking to them about mental health and what things we can do to support our mental health. In the same way we kind of highlight the need for physical activity and to looking after ourselves, the same things we should be done around mental health. And if we are talking about it, then they're going to be more comfortable talking about it. The more we talk about it, the more it reduces that stigma. I do think things are better in 2025, certainly than when I started teaching 20 odd years ago. But we still have some way to go. There is still stigma. There are still children and young people who don't feel able to talk about it because they are embarrassed, they're ashamed, they're worried about what might happen. And if we are talking about mental health in general, then the chances that young people will share if they're struggling increase. It means that they are more likely maybe to come and talk to you if they know that you are open to having those conversations. And if we are talking about mental health in a non-stigmatizing way. So what do you need to know? Because some people can be a bit concerned about having conversations about mental health. Some people can be worried. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counsellor. And actually, you don't have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. You can create a therapeutic space for children and young people to feel safe, for them to have the conversation. There's some young people that you speak to who would never dream of talking to someone at CAMS for lots of different reasons, but might talk to you because they see you every day and they know you. You don't need to be an expert to listen, okay? And this session isn't about you becoming a counsellor or listening to all of their problems. It is about having that open space to potentially have that first conversation and then help them and signpost them to the right people that can support them. So you don't need to be an expert to listen. Often young people feel comfortable talking to people they have a connection with. You see it all the time in schools with safeguarding leads. There's posters all over the place of who the safeguarding lead is, but do young children and people always choose those people to go and talk to? No, because they don't necessarily have a relationship with them. So this is why I'm a huge supporter of a whole school approach to mental health, making sure that all staff are confident in having those conversations, because you don't know whether that young person will have that connection with you. And it's really important that you should know who to refer to if you are concerned. So who are the people that you can signpost these young people to, or connect them with, or take them and have a conversation with if you are concerned about them. And the bottom line is, if at any point you're talking to a young person and you are concerned about them, you are going to have to pass that information on in the same way as you would with your safeguarding training. Never promise a child that you won't share anything if they tell you that they're struggling with their mental health. Always be clear that you might at some point have to pass that on and get some support. We can talk a little bit about that later on. So one of the things that we need to think about is, how do we spot the signs that a young person might be struggling? What might we see? And unfortunately, I can give you some guidance there, but every human is different. If you think about the people in your lives, if you think about the people in your family, they will all tend to react to things in different ways. So there is no hard set guidance as to how people will react if they're struggling with their mental health. But if we start to think about, come from a place of curiosity and think about, how is this young person? Firstly, it's usually behavior, isn't it? We see behavior. That's the first clue. And you know, all behavior is communication. So what behaviors are we seeing that might indicate that a young person might be struggling? So are they becoming more withdrawn, more isolated? Are they, on the flip side of that, becoming more aggressive, more outspoken? Are they engaging in behaviors that you haven't seen them engage in before? Are they doing things differently? Are they not coming into school, for example? That would be a behavior that might indicate that things aren't going well. How are they feeling? So are they talking to you about feelings that they're having? Are they explaining the worries that they're experiencing? Are they feeling physical symptoms that actually have no kind of other medical reason other than it comes whenever they've got a certain lesson coming up, or they've got anxiety, or they've got to go home, or there's something happening and their feelings are connected with that that thing that's going to happen? Or is their thinking affected? So are they talking a lot about being worried about things, not feeling confident and stuff, feeling really low, not feeling connected, not wanting to do things, not feeling not thinking in a way that their cognitive processes may be impacted by their mental health being in a challenging place for them. So thinking about those different levels. Unfortunately, children aren't all going to present in the same way with really clear demonstrated examples of when they're struggling with their mental health. So one of the things we can do is notice the changes. Is if we've been working with a young person and we start to see, actually, that's different behavior, I've not seen that before, something's happened, is being curious, is I've noticed that you're doing X, Y, and Z, what's happening there? Is something going on? Do you want to talk to me about things? And being curious is crucial. So if we're noticing those changes, thinking about what that might mean and having that conversation with them. So if either you decide to raise it with a young person or a child, or they come to you and talk to you about the fact that they're struggling, there are two really key things that we can do for that young person. Neither of them involve counselling, neither of them involve having the answer. They're really about creating a safe space. And when you've created that safe space, active listening. So holding space for that young person and allowing them to talk about what is happening for them. So when we're talking about creating a safe space, that is both physically and emotionally. So if a young person is struggling and you want to have a conversation with them about it, probably best not to do it in the lunch queue or in the canteen or in the middle of the class. It might be something where you take them somewhere more quiet, where, my go-to was always going for a walk. So people used to laugh at the number of steps I did when I was Senko, because I would just be constantly walking around the school with a young person, because we could talk side by side, not making eye contact, have those conversations, and often they would open up to me more readily in that space. But creating a safe space emotionally is also about letting young people know that it's okay to talk to you, letting young people know the boundaries of that conversation, so they understand that if you have concerns, you might have to go and speak to someone else, you might have to pass that information on. And as difficult as that might sound, actually children and young people really appreciate those boundaries as well, and thinking with them about what they need. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but creating that safe space where they can just talk to you about what is happening. You're not bringing any judgment, you're not kind of trying to give them the answers, you're just listening. And that's the next part that is absolutely crucial. So when we're talking about active listening, so everyone thinks they are good listeners. We all assume that we are good listeners. Most often what we are doing is listening to respond. So the next time you're having a conversation with someone, particularly if it's your partner, your significant other, you will notice that when they're talking to you, the chances are you're thinking, oh, well, what piece of information can I share back with them? What can I tell them next? Or, what else can I add into this conversation? And even more so, if a young person or a child comes to us and says that they're struggling, our fix-it brain often clicks in. So we are thinking about, what can we say to fix this situation? How can we make this situation better? As soon as we do that, we are not listening anymore. We're just not engaging in that listening process. So we really need to be active listening, and there are some key aspects to that. So comfortable focus. I talked a little bit earlier on about creating a space where a young child or young person feels comfortable to talk to you. And in the old days, maybe people would have said, keep eye contact, which might work for some young people, and it's important that you're not like reading the newspaper when they're talking to you. But equally, some young people will find that really uncomfortable. So if you take them to an office and just sit in a chair opposite them, they might tighten up. They might not feel able to share anything. But if you do something with them, alongside them, I talked about this a lot when we did the emotional literacy session, sitting alongside a young person, going for that walk, doing something, help me give these in or help me collect these up as we have a conversation. That comfortable focus is crucial. So they don't feel under pressure, but they know that you are paying attention. Listen to understand and not to respond. So that's what I was talking about a minute ago. So we're listening to fully take in what they are saying. And one of the reasons that's so powerful is quite often, it's really sad how few times young people feel listened to, because as adults, we are often ready to give the answers. I know as a parent, I'm there ready to fix and go, yeah, well, you should do X, Y, and Z. I'm getting better. I'm training myself. I have to remember my own training when talking to my children. But listening to understand, not to respond, is crucial. So we don't have to have any of the answers. Let yourself off that. If this young person is telling you all of the most challenging things you've ever heard, you don't have to have the answers. Just the fact that you are sitting and listening to them is the first step in creating a safe space for them, and is really, really important. You are probably not going to be the person that's going to be able to fix whatever challenge they're facing, and we're not here to fix anyway. So take yourself off the hook with that one, and just know that creating a safe space, listening, holding that space is a really important thing that you are doing for them. Reflect your understanding back. Now this, might recognize from dealing with a disclosure and safeguarding, because it's very similar. If you can share back with them what you are hearing, so you let them talk, and then you reflect back. So what I'm hearing is, this has happened, that's happened, this happened, this is how you are feeling about it. A couple of reasons why that's really helpful. One, it does show you're listening. And two, it checks with them that you have understood. And sometimes, particularly if a young person is really emotional, or it's taken a lot for them to talk to you about what they're talking about, and it's all kind of just tumbled out, they may say things that actually on reflection aren't accurate or don't fully represent what they're actually feeling. And it gives them that chance to hear it back and go, oh no, I didn't mean that. This is what I meant. And this is what I would like to do next. So reflecting back their understanding. And there are no quick fixes. So, at no point, I don't know any young person, I've had thousands of conversations over the years, with many young people in many different situations. I can't remember any one of them where the one thing I've said in that conversation has fixed all problems. They've gone, oh, brilliant, thanks, Mrs. Dawson, that's solved, I'll be off. It just doesn't happen. So give yourself a break. Don't assume that you're going to have those quick fix answers. And actually, they don't want the quick fix answers necessarily, because they've been living with this for a long time. They recognize that this isn't going to be a quick fix. What they do want is for you to listen and to hold that space. And finally, embrace the silence. Now, you may be better at this than I am. I am not very good at biting my tongue. And it is my instinct in a conversation to go back and forth. But what happens is, when we fill in that space, or when we just talk, it stops them. it halts their thought processes. And actually what we do when we actively listen and we allow them to talk is we're allowing them to process. For some children and people, this might be the first time they've spoken out loud about what they've been experiencing. So it's actually a really important part of the process for them to understand what's going on for them, to talk about it. So it's fine to sit and not say anything. It's fine to allow them to take a breath and to give them that time. Show them you're still listening. One of my friends, Debbie, brilliant trainer, she has this acronym, which is WAIT. Why am I talking? So if you're in that space, you just think, wait, if I'm going to speak now, what is this going to add to the conversation? Because sometimes what happens is we undermine or we belittle what's happening. Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. You're young, you've got no worries, or things will get better. And we think that we're making things better. But actually we're not. We're belittling what they're experiencing. So when we take a moment and stop, we're much more thoughtful about what we say in that time. And actually what I tend to do is just ask, anything else? What else? What else would you like to share? And give them that space to really explore what is going on for them, because you'll find that they haven't had it very often. And it is a skill. So practice your active listening in your normal everyday conversations with people. You'll notice how often you go to jump in, try and stop yourself, try and just have a conversation and just listen and see. It might freak out your partner, but it'll be interesting practice. So when we're having the conversation, you'll notice that this evening I haven't gone into lots of different diagnoses and anxiety and depression, etc. Because number one, you are not diagnosticians. That's not what your role is. And actually, everyone will present in a different way. All you need to know is if someone is struggling, you will see the changes in their behavior, in their thought, thinking and their feelings, or they might come and talk to you. The really important thing is, how do you hold that space when you get there? So it's not about knowing what's wrong with them. It's understanding what's happened to them and what they're experiencing. So if you're going to start that conversation, we go straight into that active listening phase. That's the first most important thing we can do, but really important to let them choose who they speak to. Now, it might be that they have chosen you and they've come to you and they have said they want to talk to you about this. That's great. If you have noticed things and you are picking up on signs and you are speaking to them and they're reluctant to speak to you, one of the first things you can do is try and find out if there is someone that they would feel comfortable and confident speaking to. Is there someone else in school? Is there someone else, a sports coach at church, anywhere in their support network that they can speak to? And then it might be about you supporting them to have that conversation. If they're just reluctant, they just shut it down, it's about gently keep trying, just reminding them, I'm here if you want to talk to me, or, you know, we can find some support. You know, I've noticed that you're not yourself. You know, I'm here, and keep trying. Help to identify their support network with them. You are there for a particular role in school. If you're not a counsellor, you shouldn't be having necessarily regular sessions unless you've got an ELSA role, and then that's potentially what your job is. But identifying their support network helps you to help them recognize who they have in the space around them that can help them when they're not with you, or when, you know, it's another kind of part of the day outside of school. And that support network might be people that they know. It might be places like Shout, which is a great texting service, 85258. That's 85258. That's a text service that anyone can text at any point to ask for support. It's 24/7, 365 days a year. They could do that. Young people really like the text service because they don't have to have a conversation on the phone. I used to be a volunteer for Shout, and I would often have young people in absolute mental health crisis sitting on the sofa next to mum, dad, whoever, texting me. They knew they couldn't show how they were feeling. They didn't feel safe enough to do that in the family home, but they could text. So 85258 is another part of their support network, potentially. Validating their feelings. This is a really important one, particularly if a young person or a child comes to us and says, I've been feeling really low for a long time, and they say it's because I've broken up with my boyfriend. In our heads, we might be thinking, oh, well, you're only 10, 11, 12, whatever. You know, you shouldn't have boyfriends or girlfriends, or you'll get over it. Saying that to a child who's struggling isn't going to help them. What we can say is, that sounds really tough. That sounds like a difficult situation. I can understand why you would be finding that difficult. And validating their feelings also raises their self-esteem a little bit. Oh, I'm not wrong for feeling these feelings. There's no shame in me feeling these feelings. And feelings that we are not shamed by are much easier to deal with. So validating their feelings is a small but crucial part of what we can do. Get the daily needs right. What I mean by that is, all of the research tells us that if we are sleeping well, if we're eating well, if we are moving and we are connecting with people, we have a much better chance of having good mental health, or being in a good place with our mental health. So whilst we may not have lots of control or influence on that for the young people we're working with, we can have conversations around it. So are there any areas where that is a real challenge for them? Is there any sort of outside agencies, external support that we need to pull in to help with that? And thinking about those things, that also means that they're things that the child or the young person feels that they might be able to control a little bit more. You know, I used to have conversations with young people all the time about, why are you drinking Monster at 8 in the morning when you're going to feel absolutely terrible in about 2 hours? Those little things can be changes that, yes, it's not necessarily going to mean a mental health condition disappears, but it certainly means that you're in a better headspace and more able to deal with some of the challenges that you might be facing. If we can have a strengths-based approach, and by that I mean focus on what they are doing well. Focus on what they know they can do. So if they've come to speak to you about the fact that they're struggling, that's the first thing you say. Well done. Thank you for coming to speak to me. I really appreciate the fact that you've recognized you're struggling and you need a bit of help. That is fantastic. What have you done in the past that's worked? What do you know helps you? What can we kind of focus on that you know might make the difference? And then setting goals. And that might be, you know, get better sleep tonight, or talk to another, because you know they might support you, or come and see me tomorrow and tell me if you took yourself out of that toxic WhatsApp group. Whatever it is, setting some goals, some small achievable goals, can make a real difference in self-esteem as well. So those things, remember, you're going to get all of these slides and access to these slides afterwards, so you don't have to remember all these things. So when we're talking about signposting, so we've had a conversation with a young person, we're talking about signposting. I tried to divide them up into two different things: internal signposting and external signposting. And what I mean by that is what works for them. So what do they know that they have within them that they can do that makes them feel better? So it goes back to some of those basics. They know if they get a decent night's sleep, that they will feel a bit better. That will make things easier to deal with. So focus on that first. If they know that when they are struggling, writing things down, journaling really works for some people, that is an internal thing that they can do that can help them. And when we are working with children, young people, to recognize these things that they can do within themselves, we are also empowering them. I would say probably 9 times out of 10, when a child or young person comes to us and speaks to us, we can see where the challenge is, we can see what they could do to make things better, and we could probably just go, well, if you do this X, Y, and Z, then you'll feel a lot better. But because it's come from us, it doesn't kind of seep in as much. When they explore it and they come up with the things that might work, they are much more motivated to do it. They're much more motivated to recognize the power of it. And if we're empowering them, that means that they're more likely to then take on that internal signposting the next time before they come and speak to you. And external is, again, thinking about who is in their network. Who can they go to? Who might you need to kind of connect them with? Who do they have in their space? Do they get on really well with their form tutor, for example? What's their friendship group like? Can they use places like Shout, Childline if they're really struggling? So thinking about building up that network. Sometimes it can be really useful to actually write that down and make a list of those things, make a little plan. We haven't got time to go through it today, but a wellbeing toolkit. What do I know? How do I know when I'm struggling? What are the triggers? What are the things I know will mean that I'm going to struggle more? Who can I go to? What do I need when I'm struggling? Kind of coming up with some of those things can be really useful. So you've had the conversation. You've talked about signposting. One of the key things that we can do at the end of those conversations is explore, what do they need? What do they need from you? And what do they need in general? What do they need from you? They might not need anything. They might just feel better having spoken to you about the challenges they're facing. Remember that experiencing challenges with your mental health, again, we haven't had time tonight, but I would normally talk through the mental health continuum, and you can look that up online, which it's not just an on-off switch. So it's not just about having good mental health or bad mental health. So it might be for some young people that they've been struggling with their mental health, but because they haven't been speaking about it, it's kind of built up. And having had that 10-15 minutes with you, they're feeling better, they're more able to do things, they're more able to kind of move forward and make some of those changes. It might be that actually they don't know what they need and they need your support to explore that. And so they might need your help in thinking about who are the people that they can access. And that's a really difficult question as well, because we know that external services, there aren't as many as there used to be. There is a real challenge around that, but thinking about what do they need doesn't always have to be a referral to CAMHS, for example. When I was working for London Borough of Newham, we created something called the MAC, which was an opportunity for young people to, if they're on the waiting list for CAMHS, to connect with activities. So it might be a dance group or a football team or a crafting activity or anything. Thinking about for some young people, that connection is what they need. It's that group support that they might need. Even if the group don't know that they're struggling, it's just being in the group that makes a difference. So don't assume that this young person will need CAMHS input or a doctor's input. For some of them, they just need a regular check-in and to kind of enjoy some activities and to engage in some of the things that they know that they enjoy. Who else might need to know? So this is really important. Having struggles with your mental health is not a safeguarding issue necessarily, but I would always have in mind that if a young person is talking to you about the challenges with their mental health, you shouldn't be the only person that has that information. So who else might need to know? So probably their form tutor, maybe their head of year. Do parents, carers know? And that's something that you will want to have conversations with other members of staff with to decide what the best next steps are. Obviously, you don't want to jump in and just go, right, I'm going to phone your parents, tell them we've had this conversation. But equally, children and people need to understand that you may have to have that conversation in order to access the support that they need. So making sure you've thought about who else in the stakeholder group might need to know, how do they need to know, and how are you going to make sure that the young person knows that you're going to have those conversations. You get quite often with these things, I've had some really difficult situations where I've had young people sharing with me that they want to take their own lives or that they've self-harmed, and I have to have that conversation with parents, carers. I can't not. And that wouldn't be a role for you, that would be a role for your safeguarding leads in your school. But quite often what I will do is give them a sense of control. So I'm just letting you know that I'm going to have to tell X, Y, and Z people. These are the people that I need to know. This is why they need to know. What shall we tell them? What's the information that you are happy for me to share? I need to share this bit definitely, but let's work out what else we're going to share. So they've got a little bit of control on there. And then the really important bit as we come to the end is, what do you need? These are difficult conversations. Being a teaching assistant can be a really stressful job. I know I'm telling you that, and you know that. And you care. That's why you do the role you do. So when a child or a young person shares with you that they're struggling with their mental health, it has an emotional toll on you. So you need to think about what you can do, what you need to do to look after yourself, whether that is going off and talking to a colleague about a difficult conversation, whether it's talking to your line manager about it. you know, what do you need? It might just be going home and having a long bath or going for a walk or whatever it is that you need to do. But that is a really important part of this process, because if you are then going to be ready to pick up the next day and carry on, you need to have looked after yourself. It's the oxygen mask approach. You know, when you're on the plane, they always tell you, if the oxygen mask come down, you're with children, you put yours on first, because otherwise you won't be able to help to put the children's on. So that's exactly what we need to do, making sure that you're looking after yourself as well. So let's just go over some of those top tips. Building those positive relationships based on trust and open communication, actively listening. So we're not bringing judgment and we're validating their feelings, thinking about creating that safe space where they feel secure, thinking about how they can develop some coping strategies. So what is it that they need? What do they need that works for them? What can they do that helps them in those moments? But really celebrate their strengths and achievements. The fact that they've spoken to you is a big deal. So make a big deal about it. Different young people will present their challenges differently. So just because someone, there are lots of famous examples of people that present really happy and present that everything is okay, but actually underneath they're struggling. And it might be difficult to spot that. But if you're noticing changes in behavior, be curious. Bring your curiosity into that conversation. Prioritize your own well-being to effectively support others. If you are not looking at, you can't pour from an empty cup. Essentially, you can't do any of the things that we've talked about today if you're not looking after yourself. So that has to be your priority. Self-care is not selfish. So there are loads of things online on Twinkl's website that you can access, thinking about SEMH, thinking about supporting co-regulation, general mental health awareness, some of those conversations around emotional well-being, mental health support. The Life PSHE programs have lots of information in there as well. We've got lots of things that we've done with Mind. So definitely go online and have a look. Emotionally based school avoidance. There's lots on there that is a huge challenge for many of our young people at the moment. It's in a whole other 45-minute session, but there are some great resources on there as well.